because you know there are all that rumors out that my movies are financed with Nazi gold, and what should I say? It's true. But somebody must do something with the money.
Do you know that my father died in Auschwitz?
My grandpa died also in Auschwitz. He fell from a watchtower.
When you hear the name Uwe Boll, you probably aren't thinking quality, are you? The man responsible for such classics as Blood Rain, House of the Dead, Far Cry and Dungeon Siege movies has another crack at a video game adaptation, this time 2007's Postal. Now, Postal might not be a game many people are familiar with, as it was kind of courted in controversy for its unsavoury kind of subject matter, where you basically play a guy who goes postal, and in case you don't know what that means, is essentially it goes on a killing spree in a very kind of tasteless video game. That actually brought a couple of sequels, I think, and I think the game was mostly banned in places. And of course this attracted the attentions of Uwe Boll, who wanted to kind of respond to his critics by making a kind of a knowingly controversial film, shall we call it, and really kind of calling out some of his detractors whilst trying to make a video game adaptation as well. Now, does it matter about the plot of this one? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway, because there is a plot, kind of, silly as it may be. It focuses on this character simply called Dude, and he's played by Zack Ward, and he's kind of like a down on his luck type guy. And he gets involved in a weird plot. His uncle is kind of involved in this sort of Scientology style church, but they're in debt with the IRS, and they're trying to need to raise money. So they want to try and essentially steal a shipment of the latest kind of trendy toy which is selling out, which is this dick-shaped doll. Yeah, you know. Anyway, and him and his kind of doomsday cult decide that they want to try and rip off this shipment of these particular dolls, but at the same time the Taliban also wants to kind of take hold of this shipment, because they've actually basically smuggled the bird flu in these dolls at the same time. So we have two different kind of outfits, so to speak, trying to kind of get this shipment of illegal dolls, and we have chaos essentially as the police, the neighbourhood watch, pretty much everyone kind of gets involved, including the US president. Yeah, it's obviously the plot is not meant to be any type of sense here. It's just meant to be kind of an excuse to have either a gag or an action sequence. Now, it's probably quite easy to dismiss Uwe Boll movies, and for the most part, yes, his films are not very good. But I try to when I'm watching a film to review, I try to take away any kind of expectations or preconceived ideas about, you know, what a movie might be, and judge it based on its merits. I actually don't mind House of the Dead, for example, and he did Uwe Boll did a Vietnam film called Tunnel Rats, which I also didn't mind. And can I say some stuff about Postal in the positive column? Yes, I can actually. So let's discuss. I was surprised with the production value of this film. When I was watching this, I think, Jesus, it actually looks like they've spent a reasonable amount of money on this film. Having looked afterwards, it actually had a $15 million budget, which doesn't seem a lot when you compare it to kind of modern blockbusters. But for a kind of a low budget film, you know, it's a fairly high budget, and you do have a kind of host of recognisable faces in there. As I've mentioned, Zack Ward kind of plays our kind of main character, but you've got J.K. Simmons, you've got Michael Paré, you've got Ralph Moeller, Vern Troyer, plus a few other kind of recognisable faces as well in smaller parts. Plus there's a hell of a lot of kind of visual effects on display here, and lots of kind of like wide angle shootouts, explosions, gunfights, and kind of other kind of craziness as well. So I'm sure, I mean, there's been kind of, you know, where does all this budget go, but nonetheless there definitely has been a reasonable amount of money kind of spent on this production. So it doesn't look like a complete disaster, certainly in regards to production value. I actually think there is some reasonable special effects here. Like I've said, there's the actual filmmaking on a technical side of things looks fairly proficient. There's actually quite a lot of kind of wide angle shots, you know, lots of kind of extras, lots of kind of like set design and stuff like that, which I actually think I was surprised at, because it kind of, you would think having this movie, but having this kind of film based on such a controversial game with such a controversial director, you can imagine it would be difficult to get financing or people involved in it, but there you go, he did. So, production-wise, it doesn't look too bad, I will say. Now, the storyline is complete nonsense. You know, we can't talk about does the storyline make sense, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. This is not one to really critique the script, to be honest. But is this movie entertaining? I will say there are a couple of funny jokes here. Now, the big thing with this film, and a lot of Uwe Boll films, is going to be taste. But in extra special with this movie, it is deliberately trying to be tasteless and court controversy by kind of, you know, doing things deliberately that they know that will piss off a lot of people. There's jokes about Auschwitz, there's jokes about 9/11, there's jokes about disability. We see scenes where kids get shot. In actual fact, there's like a massacre scene, and the camera actually focuses on a variety of kids getting shot. We see people getting run over. Everything you can imagine that will be kind of controversial and, you know, maybe not in the best of taste, is on display purposely, and it's kind of obviously meant to be a satire. But there are some funny jokes. Now, obviously, you can kind of just paint all of this with, oh, it's going to be very tasteless, it's not going to be... And yes, obviously, humour is obviously very kind of subjective, and this humour won't be suitable for everyone, and a lot of people, I would imagine, will be turned off by the taste issue. But even within that, I do think there are a couple of isolated jokes that are genuinely kind of funny, and there are some sequences that are... you know, that are funny. Think things like Scary Movie, Airplane. It's a kind of a spoof film. So if you like those type of films, but you want to see one ratcheted up in the controversy levels, then this is the one. But even so, like I've said, there are still some kind of funny jokes within there. The movie actually still tries to have a little bit of social commentary as well. It's obviously coming from a somewhat of a specific kind of ideology, shall we say. Nonetheless, though, it does still try to have some sort of social commentary. And I've got to say, at the very least, there were some fairly well-defined sort of characters here, even though they're obviously all kind of cartoon characters. But obviously, let's now transition into what doesn't work. Now, again, I'm just going to really kind of just repeat what I've just said, but from the other side of the coin here. The jokes here are deliberately going to be offensive, I would say, to the majority of people. Early on in the movie, there's a scene where we see a plane crash into the kind of the World Trade Center, and of course, you know, you can understand why people would be upset. Now, the director has gone on to say that it was like, you took that clip out of context, you know, it could be more offensive, but it doesn't matter. This movie will be offensive to a lot of people. It deliberately tries to be as tasteless and moronic as you can possibly imagine. So, you know, you've got to have a pretty kind of laid-back attitude, I think, not to be annoyed, at least at some parts of this film. Now, I kind of can enjoy a good joke and stuff, you know, and I don't get offended, but I can understand how people would. And I think it's fair if people didn't like the kind of the taste issues here. I have to say, I think the movie, it does drag. I mean, it was quite amusing for a while, but the kind of the joke wears a little thin. There's really kind of a lot of rinse and repeat in regards to the kind of the comedy beats within this film. There are some isolated ones that I do feel are quite funny, but I have to be honest with you, the joke was running a little thin by the kind of the third act of this film. And there are some jokes here that are desperately unfunny. You know, we've got a guy talking to someone while he's having a shit and stuff like that, and there's a big, like, you know, it's funny fart sounds and stuff like that. It's just like, there are jokes here that are just simply born to fail, I'm afraid. And And, you know, again, I can't really say anything about the plot because the plot doesn't matter in a film like this. So it is just a kind of a series of skits and things like that. But the joke, you know, as I said, the joke West in, it does seem a little bit kind of like a personal attack that from Uwe Boll to any of his detractors. So you feel like you're kind of watching someone else's like personal quarrel with the kind of the Hollywood establishment, and that's obviously Uwe Boll is famous for having, you know, the kind of these kind of antagonistic relationships with like the Hollywood media and stuff like that, and people within the kind of the film industry. And it feels like it's just an attack on them and kind of some of the kind of like American capitalism and things like that. So it kind of feels like this was just a thing of a way to try and, you know, just basically thumb in the eye of anyone who didn't agree with Uwe Boll's opinions and stuff like that. You know, like I've said, there is some kind of funny jokes. I wasn't actually expecting this to be as funny as it was, I will say. I'm not saying it's a laugh a minute. I would say one in 4 jokes hit for me, which isn't a great batting average, but there were, trust me, there's a joke every kind of few seconds in this kind of film. So there was some funny moments. Taste-wise, this thing is... I just have to repeat that it is not going to be for the majority of the people. You have to have a certain kind of disposition to find this kind of movie funny, or even if like the jokes that are funny and the stuff that surrounds it, you just got to kind of let it wash over you. But it was better than I thought, I won't lie. But it's still not a good film. It's not really an entertaining film. It's just a bunch of skits that kind of loosely connected with a thin narrative. 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Oh, it's nothing like the game as well, which is actually a joke they make in the movie. Just worth pointing out. So if you're expecting an actual game adaptation, forget it. I mean, that's also true of some of his other kind of game adaptations, like the Dungeon Siege one. Nothing to do with the actual game, barely. Anyway, as I say, 4 out of 10. What did you think of it? Have you seen it? Would you see it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.